The Great Hall of Predators was the most famous place in the galaxy. Inside its vast shining walls, the most dangerous creatures from every world were ranked, celebrated, and feared. Bright banners hung from the high ceiling, each showing the face of a predator, some with claws, some with fangs, some with eyes that glowed red like fire. The air smelled of metal, ozone, and fear. On this day, the hall was full. Dozens of alien species stood in rows, each taller or stranger than the next. Some had long horns, others had leathery wings, a few floated above the ground. Their eyes all focused on the stage at the center, where the Council of Predators stood in a perfect line. "Today," announced the High Speaker, a tall alien with scales like black glass, "we reveal the updated Predator rankings. The strongest creatures in the galaxy, measured by strength, speed, and cunning." Applause echoed through the hall. A hologram lit up above the stage, showing terrifying beasts, a spiked monster from Drukenfor, a massive serpent from the Burning Sands of Valen, and the winged hunter from the icy moons of Cyril. "Humans," the speaker continued, his glowing yellow eyes sweeping across the room, "you have been invited to watch and learn. Perhaps you can finally understand what real predators look like." The humans stood quietly in one corner, just 5 of them, dressed in simple uniforms. Most of the aliens ignored them. Some chuckled. A few even sneered. But one human, a man named Ethan, stood at the front. His dark eyes studied the creatures on the hologram carefully. His lips curved in a faint smile. When the applause died down, he raised his hand. The speaker frowned. "Yes, human?" Ethan spoke in a calm, even voice. "I see your rankings. Impressive creatures. But I wonder, where do tigers fit in?" For a second, the room was silent. Then laughter erupted like thunder. Aliens doubled over, clutching their sides. The speaker bared his sharp teeth in a grin. "A tiger?" he mocked. "Is that some kind of pet? Is that what humans bring to a predator hall?" The crowd roared with amusement. But Ethan's smile didn't falter. He only tapped a small device on his wrist. A glowing image appeared in the air, a huge striped animal moving through golden grass. Its muscles rippled under its fur, and its sharp eyes shone with something ancient and deadly. Some of the laughter stopped. The alien closest to the hologram stepped back. "What is that?" whispered another. "This," Ethan said, "is a tiger." The speaker narrowed his eyes. "Looks like a large cat." "Pretty, but hardly a threat," Ethan chuckled softly. "Why don't we test that? Bring a tiger here. Let it compete with your top predators." Gasps spread through the hall. No one had ever challenged the rankings before. The speaker's grin returned, cruel this time. "Fine," he said. "Bring us your tiger. Let's see it die." 2 weeks later, a spaceship returned from Earth, its engines roaring as it landed outside the hall. A team of humans wheeled in a massive cage, covered in black cloth. The air seemed to grow heavier as they approached. Even before anyone could see inside, they felt something watching them. The cloth was pulled away. Inside, 2 golden eyes blazed, like fire from the shadows. Slowly, the tiger stepped forward, silent and graceful. Its powerful body moved with perfect confidence. Its claws clicked softly on the floor. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the speaker barked, "Begin." Let it face the number 10 predator. A large, armored beast lumbered into the arena, its claws scraping the stone floor. Its mouth foamed as it roared, eager to kill. The tiger crouched low, tail flicking. For a breathless second, they stared at each other. Then the beast charged out. The tiger didn't move. It waited, its body perfectly still. At the last moment, it leaped sideways, faster than the eye could follow. The alien beast crashed into the wall. Before it could turn, the tiger was on its back, claws sinking into flesh. One savage bite, and it was over. The hall fell silent. The speaker hissed. Beginner's luck. One by one, the tiger faced stronger predators. The rank 8 beast, a snake with deadly venom, struck fast, but the tiger struck faster, jaws snapping it in two. Rank 5, a creature with wings and blades for arms, flew at the tiger, but it was torn down mid-air. Each victory was quicker, more brutal. By the time the tiger defeated rank 3, even the speaker's grin was gone. The hall no longer laughed. Whispers spread through the crowd. How can it move like that? It doesn't hesitate. Those eyes. They look at you like you're already dead. Ethan stood in the corner, arms crossed, still smiling. The speaker finally stood. Enough. You've proved your point, human. But it cannot defeat number 1. The champion is undefeated for 200 years. Ethan only shrugged. Then let's see. The number 1 predator entered the arena. A massive monster, taller than 3 humans, with thick, jagged armor and burning red eyes. It let out a roar that shook the hall. Even the tiger flinched. Just for a moment, the speaker smiled again, confident. Now your little pet meets its end. The tiger and the monster circled each other. The monster struck first, swinging one huge claw. The tiger dodged, barely, and the floor cracked where it had stood. The tiger leaped onto its back, but the armor held. The monster threw it off, slamming it into the wall. For the first time, the tiger bled. But it got up slowly, its golden eyes brighter than ever. It crouched low, waiting. The monster charged, its huge jaws opened. At the last second, the tiger moved, not away, but toward it. Sliding under its belly, it sank its claws deep into the weak spot behind the front leg. With a roar, the tiger climbed higher, biting at the neck joint where the armor plates met. It held there, clinging like a shadow. The monster thrashed wildly, smashing walls, trying to shake the tiger off. But with one final brutal bite, the tiger pierced the flesh beneath the armor. The monster collapsed, its roar dying into a gurgle. Hall was silent again. The number 1 predator lay dead. The speaker stared, his black scales pale now. Slowly, he turned to Ethan. Ethan walked forward, hands behind his back. He stopped beside the tiger, who sat calmly, licking its paw. This is just one, Ethan said softly. One of many. On Earth, we live beside predators like this every day. We are not the strongest there. We survive by learning from them. The speaker swallowed hard, his arrogance gone. Ethan smiled. And if this is what one tiger can do, imagine what we can do. The hall was quiet. The aliens looked at each other, uneasy, afraid. The humans turned to leave. Behind them, the tiger followed silently, its golden eyes glowing in the shadows. As the humans walked out, a murmur rose among the aliens, not of laughter anymore, but of fear. The humans left the great hall of predators knowing they had taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. After the tiger's victory in the great hall, the humans left quietly. Ethan walked at the front, his hands still behind his back. The tiger padded at his side, silent and powerful. Behind them, the aliens in the hall stood frozen, watching the humans disappear through the giant doors. Some of them whispered. Others just stared at the dead body of the number 1 predator, still lying in the arena. The speaker didn't move for a long time. His yellow eyes stayed fixed on the humans until the doors closed with a heavy thud. When the sound faded, he finally spoke. Follow them. 2 dark-cloaked figures nodded and slipped into the shadows. Unseen. Outside the hall, the humans walked toward their ship. The air outside was cooler, full of strange scents and the quiet hum of the city. Ethan didn't look back, but he could feel the weight of many eyes on him. One of the human team, a young woman named Sarah, finally spoke. Ethan, she said quietly, why did you provoke them like that? They look afraid now. Ethan smiled faintly without turning. Good. Fear makes them think twice. Another human, Mark, shook his head. Maybe, but it also makes them dangerous. Ethan stopped walking. He turned to look at his team. His eyes were calm, but sharp. That's why we brought the tiger, he said, to remind them what real danger looks like. They kept walking toward the ship. But the tiger paused, turning its head slightly. Its golden eyes narrowed as it stared into the darkness behind them. Something's following us, Sarah murmured. I know, Ethan replied. Let them come. They boarded their ship and left the city. The craft rose smoothly into the sky, the ground shrinking below. But the tiger didn't relax. It stood near the window, tail flicking, still watching the shadows below dot in the cargo. Hold, the team gathered. The tiger sat in the middle, licking its paw. Mark finally spoke up. What now? We showed them. We proved our point. Ethan shook his head slowly. No, that was just the first move. You heard the way they laughed. At us in the hall. You saw their faces when the tiger won. They're planning something, Sarah frowned. You think they'll attack? I know they will, Ethan said simply. Later that night, the ship floated above a quiet planet. The humans decided to rest before returning to Earth. The sky outside was black and full of strange stars. The humans lay in their bunks, but Ethan stayed awake, sitting beside the tiger. He spoke softly, almost to himself. They can't let this go. Their pride won't allow it. The tiger lifted its head and stared at him with unblinking eyes. Ethan smiled faintly. We'll be ready. At that moment, the lights in the ship flickered. The engines let out a strange sound. Then everything went dark. An alarm blared. Red lights flashed. Sarah and Mark jumped up from their bunks. What happened? Sarah shouted. Ethan was already standing. They've boarded us. The team grabbed their weapons, but before they could even open the door, the wall behind them exploded. Smoke and dust filled the air. Through the hole stepped the two cloaked figures, the ones who had followed them earlier. But now they were not hiding. Their cloaks fell away, revealing tall skeletal creatures with sharp, blade-like arms and eyes that glowed like ice. One of them hissed. You should have stayed silent, human. Ethan didn't flinch. He just tilted his head slightly. The tiger growled low in its throat. Its golden eyes blazed. The aliens lunged at them, blades flashing. Sarah fired her weapon, but the first alien dodged it easily, slicing the gun in half. Mark swung a metal pipe, but it was knocked away. The second alien raised its blade to strike Sarah, but it never landed. The tiger moved faster than anyone could see, leaping from the shadows and slamming into the alien's chest. Its claws tore through the creature's armor like paper. The alien shrieked, but the tiger didn't stop. It bit deep into its neck. Throwing the lifeless body aside, the first alien turned to flee, but Ethan stepped forward, blocking its path. You came to hunt us, Ethan said quietly. Now you know how it feels. The tiger circled the last alien slowly, tail flicking. Then it pounced, ending the fight in a heartbeat. The team stood in silence. Smoke hung in the air. The two dead aliens lay at their feet. Sarah finally spoke. They sent assassins to kill us. Ethan nodded. And they'll send more. Mark swallowed hard. Then what do we do? Ethan looked down at the tiger, who was now sitting calmly, licking its paw again. He rested a hand on its head. We send a message, Ethan said. His voice was low, but every word was clear. They thought the tiger was just an animal. They thought humans were weak. They were wrong. He turned to his team. We go back to the hall. The next day, the human ship landed again outside the Great Hall of Predators. This time, the humans didn't wait for an invitation. They walked through the doors as the aliens inside froze, staring at them. The speaker was already waiting, his yellow eyes burning with anger. You dare return after what you did? He snarled. Ethan didn't stop walking. He climbed onto the stage, the tiger following close behind. You broke the rules. the speaker hissed. "You brought death into this hall." Ethan met his gaze steadily. "No, you broke the rules. You tried to kill us. You sent assassins to our ship." The speaker's expression faltered. Whispers spread through the crowd. Ethan raised a small device and pressed a button. A hologram appeared, showing the two skeletal assassins sneaking onto the human ship, and then the tiger tearing them apart. The speaker's face went pale. Ethan stepped closer. "You thought you could silence us. You thought you could erase what happened here yesterday." He let the words hang in the air. "But now," Ethan continued, his voice cold, "every species in this hall knows the truth. You are not the masters of predators anymore. Not after what you saw. Not after what you felt." The crowd of aliens shifted nervously. Many lowered their eyes. Others glanced at the tiger, who was staring back at them, calm and deadly. Ethan lowered his voice so only the speaker could hear. "And if you ever try to harm a human again, we won't just bring the tiger." The speaker swallowed hard. His pride was shattered. As the humans left the hall once more, the aliens stayed silent. No laughter this time. No mocking smiles. Only fear. Outside, Sarah walked beside Ethan. "You think they got the message?" Ethan gave a small smile. "Oh, they got it." The tiger padded ahead of them, its golden eyes fixed on the horizon. It paused at the top of the steps, turned its head, and let out a low, rumbling growl that echoed through the streets. And every alien in the city heard it. In the days that followed, whispers of the tiger spread through the galaxy. Tales of its speed, its strength, and its deadly calm. But more than the tiger, they spoke of the humans, who walked beside such a creature without fear. On distant worlds, in dark corners of space, aliens began to wonder, if this was just one of their predators, what else were the humans hiding? Ethan stood at the viewing window of their ship as they left the planet behind. The stars stretched out ahead of them, bright and endless. He glanced at the tiger, who lay quietly at his feet. "They're afraid now," Sarah said softly. Ethan nodded. "Good, let them be." The tiger lifted its head and yawned, showing its sharp teeth before closing its eyes again. As the ship slipped into the darkness of space, Ethan spoke one last time, more to himself than anyone else. "This is only the beginning." The stars outside the ship glowed brighter than diamonds. The human crew sat silently at the table, each lost in thought. Sarah finally broke the silence. "So, what now?" "We showed them the tiger. We faced their assassins. But do you really think this is over?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He stood by the window, his eyes fixed on the endless black outside. His hands rested behind his back as always. "They won't stop," he said quietly. "They can't. We embarrassed them in their own hall. We shattered their pride in front of the entire galaxy." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "And what do we do?" Ethan turned to face them. His dark eyes were calm, but sharp as a blade. "We don't wait for them to strike again. This time we hunt them." The tiger lay on the floor nearby, its tail swishing back and forth. At the sound of Ethan's voice, it lifted its head, golden eyes glowing in the dim light. Sarah frowned. "You mean go after the speaker?" "Yes," Ethan said simply. "He's already moving against us. We finish this before he does." Mark hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right, where do we start?" Ethan tapped his wrist device. A small map flickered into the air, showing a remote planet at the edge of the galaxy. "Here," Ethan said. "This is where he hides his real power. Not the hall, not the city, but here, in the deep jungle of Zara Prime." Sarah glanced at the tiger, who was now standing, staring at the map too. "Then let's hunt," she said. The ship descended through thick clouds, landing in silence on a dark green world. The air was heavy and warm, full of strange scents and distant roars. The jungle stretched out around them like a living wall, vines curling over enormous black trees. Strange eyes glowed from the shadows. The ground shook occasionally with the footsteps of unseen beasts. The humans stepped out cautiously. The tiger followed behind them, its nose twitching, its body tense. Mark muttered, "Feels like the whole planet wants to eat us." Ethan smiled faintly. "Good. That means we're in the right place." They moved through the jungle in single file, weapons ready. The tiger prowled ahead, silent and watchful. Every so often, it stopped to sniff the air, then moved on. Past, the sun above dimmed to a deep red. Strange screams and howls echoed through the trees. Sarah whispered, "Are you sure he's here?" Ethan glanced at her. "Oh, he's here. He's waiting for us." Suddenly, the tiger stopped, its ears flattened. Its golden eyes stared into the darkness ahead. Ethan raised his hand. The group froze. From the shadows something stepped forward. Tall, thin, and covered in dark armor. It moved with a fluid grace, its eyes like icy blue knives. "Welcome," it hissed, its voice soft but sharp. "We have been expecting you." Ethan didn't flinch. "Where is the speaker?" The creature smiled faintly. Closer than you think." Mark raised his weapon. But before he could fire, more shapes emerged from the jungle, dozens of armored figures. Surrounding them. Sarah cursed under her breath. "Ambush." Ethan's smile didn't fade. "No," he said calmly. "Not yet." At that moment, the tiger leapt. It moved so fast it was almost invisible, crashing into the closest figure with a roar that shook the trees. The alien screamed as claws tore through its armor. Chaos exploded. The humans fought back to back, weapons flashing. The tiger darted through the enemy like lightning, a streak of gold and shadow. It tore one, then another, never slowing. Ethan ducked a blade and fired his weapon point-blank into an alien's chest. He caught Sarah's eye and nodded. Double quotes go, he said. She hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll find him," Ethan replied. "Get to the ship if you can." Mark grabbed Sarah's arm and pulled her away. "Come on." They ran toward the clearing, fighting through the creatures that tried to block their path. The tiger stayed behind, holding the attackers at bay, its roars echoing through the jungle. Ethan slipped into the shadows, moving deeper into the trees. Jungle grew darker and thicker as he moved forward. Strange lights glowed in the distance, and the air became colder. Ethan followed a faint trail of disturbed earth and broken vines. He finally reached a clearing and stopped. In the center stood the speaker. He no longer wore his ceremonial robes. His black glass scales gleamed in the strange light. His claws were longer now, sharper. His eyes glowed bright yellow as he turned to face Ethan. "So," the speaker said, his voice low and dangerous, "you came to die." Ethan stepped into the clearing, unarmed. He stared at the speaker without fear. "You've already lost," Ethan said quietly. "You just don't see it yet." The speaker laughed bitterly. "You think your little pet frightens me? You think one animal can change the galaxy?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Not one animal, one lesson." The speaker's grin twisted into a snarl. "Then learn this." He lunged forward, claws flashing. Ethan moved just enough to avoid the first strike. The speaker was faster than anything he had faced before. The alien struck again and again, each blow barely missing. Ethan ducked, rolled, and grabbed a jagged branch from the ground. He swung it hard, striking the speaker across the face. The alien roared in fury, but then the jungle behind them shivered. Golden eyes appeared in the darkness. The tiger emerged slowly, silent and deadly. Its fur was streaked with blood, its fangs bared. The speaker froze. For the first time, his confidence cracked. "No," he whispered. "Not here, not now." The tiger crouched low, its muscles tense. Ethan spoke softly. "Now you see." The speaker turned to run, but the tiger leapt, faster than thought. It struck the speaker in mid-step, slamming him to the ground. The alien struggled, but the tiger's claws sank deep. Its jaws closed around his throat. With one final savage twist, the fight was over. Ethan stood over the speaker's lifeless body, breathing hard. The tiger stepped back, its chest rising and falling slowly. It sat down, licking its paw. From the jungle behind them, Sarah and Mark appeared, bloodied but alive. "You found him," Sarah said, her voice low. Ethan nodded. "It's done." Mark stared at the speaker's body. "So that's it. We're safe now." Ethan looked at him, then at the tiger, then back at the stars above. "For now," he said quietly. "But they'll remember this. They'll remember what happens when you corner a tiger." The humans and the tiger made their way back to the ship. The jungle around them was quiet now, as though even the creatures of this world had learned to fear them. At the landing site, the team paused to look back at the jungle one last time. Sarah broke the silence. "They'll never forget this." Ethan smiled faintly. "Good." They boarded the ship. The engines roared to life, lifting them into the sky. Through the window, Ethan watched the planet shrink below them, the green jungle fading into the black of space. Beside him, the tiger lay. On the floor, its eyes half closed, its body relaxed. But Ethan knew it was still watching, still ready. Mark leaned against the wall, exhausted. "Do you think they'll come after us again?" Ethan didn't take his eyes off the stars. "If they're smart," he said softly, "they won't." Sarah glanced at the tiger, then at Ethan. "And if they're not?" Ethan smiled faintly, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Then we teach them again." The ship vanished into the stars, leaving only silence behind, and the whisper of the tiger. In the dark, the ship drifted silently through the black sea of stars. Inside, the humans sat in the dim light of the command deck. No one spoke. The quiet hum of the engines filled the silence. Ethan stood by the window, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the endless darkness outside. Sarah sat at the console, her fingers dancing over the controls, scanning the void. Mark leaned against the wall, his weapon resting at his side. And in the corner of the room, the tiger lay stretched out on the floor, tail flicking lazily, golden eyes half closed, but still watching. Finally, Mark spoke. "So, now what? We killed the speaker. We sent the message. Are we done?" Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. He shook his head. "Not yet." Sarah glanced over her shoulder. "What do you mean? You think they're still coming?" "They're not just coming," Ethan said quietly. "They're already here." Mark frowned. "What makes you so sure?" Ethan didn't answer. He just stared out into the stars. That night, while the others slept, Ethan stayed awake. He sat on the floor, next to the tiger, watching it as it breathed slowly, its ears twitching at every distant sound. He spoke softly, more to himself than to anyone else. "They won't stop, not after what we did. Not after what you did." The tiger opened one eye, gazing at him with its golden stare. Ethan smiled faintly. "Good. Let them come." At that moment, the ship's lights flickered. The engines groaned. A low alarm began to sound. Sarah's voice came over the speaker. "Ethan, you better come up here." He rose silently and walked to the command deck. Outside the window, a strange shadow loomed in the distance, something massive, moving without sound, blocking the stars behind it. Mark swore under his breath. "What is that?" Sarah's fingers flew over the controls. "It's not on any chart, no signal, no name." Ethan just watched. His jaw tightened. "It's them." The shadow grew larger as it drifted closer. Soon, its shape became clear. A ship, blacker than the void, with sharp edges and glowing red lights like eyes. "They're hailing us," Sarah said nervously. Ethan gave a small nod. "Put it through." The screen lit up with static, then cleared to reveal an alien figure, taller than the speaker, with skin like molten metal and a crown of jagged horns. Its eyes were deep pools of darkness. "You should not have killed him," the figure said. Its voice was deep and calm, but full of menace. You should have stayed silent. Ethan didn't flinch. He came for us first. He failed. The alien tilted its head slightly. I am not the speaker. I am the Shadow Regent. I speak for all who rule. Sarah whispered, Shadow Regent. Ethan's eyes never left the screen. What do you want? The Regent's smile was slow, cold. You're Tiger. You're humans. All of you, dead. Then the screen went black dot. The ship shuddered as a powerful beam of light struck its side. The humans stumbled as alarms blared. They're boarding. Sarah shouted. Ethan's expression didn't change. Let them. Mark stared at him. You're insane. Ethan glanced at the Tiger, who was already standing, its muscles tense, golden eyes blazing. We've been waiting for this. The ship's walls shook as the enemy forced their way in. Doors hissed open, and armored figures poured in. Taller and stronger than the assassins before, their weapons crackling with energy. The humans opened fire, holding them back at the entrance. Mark shouted over the noise, There's too many. Ethan crouched beside the Tiger. Ready? The Tiger growled low in its throat, then leapt into the fray. It struck the first soldier with a roar, tearing through armor and flesh like paper. The humans followed, fighting side by side with the Tiger as the corridors filled with chaos. Ethan moved through the battle like a shadow, his weapon precise, his step steady. Sarah and Mark fought behind him, holding their ground, but the enemy kept coming, wave after wave. Suddenly, a blast knocked Ethan off his feet. He rolled, hitting the wall hard. A towering figure loomed over him, taller than any before. Its face hidden behind a black mask, its claws glowing red. You are nothing, it hissed. Ethan looked up calmly. Then come find out. Before the creature could strike, the Tiger slammed into it from the side, claws sinking deep. The two rolled across the floor, a tangle of fury and blood. Ethan rose to his feet, breathing hard. He shouted to Sarah, Go! Get to the engine room. What about you? She yelled back, I'll finish this. He called Sarah, and Mark ran toward the engine room, fighting through enemy soldiers. The Tiger and the black-masked creature clashed in the center of the corridor, their snarls and roars echoing through the ship. Ethan stepped forward, his weapon raised. But before he could fire, the creature threw the Tiger aside and lunged at him, knocking the gun away. The two crashed into the wall. Ethan struggled, but the creature was too strong. Its claws pressed closer, sparks flying as it hissed in his ear. You should have stayed in the shadows. Ethan bared his teeth. So, should you? At that moment, the Tiger struck again, this time with a fury even Ethan had never seen. It ripped the creature off him, jaws locking around its throat, claws tearing into its chest. The creature's scream shook the ship, then stopped. The Tiger stood over the body, its fur streaked with blood, its chest heaving. Ethan slowly got to his feet. He rested a hand on the Tiger's back. Good job. The ship went quiet. The remaining enemies fled back to their shadow ship, leaving trails of smoke and blood behind. Sarah and Mark returned from the engine room, out of breath. But alive. It's over, Sarah said, looking around at the wreckage. Ethan shook his head. Not yet. Mark stared at him. What do you mean, we beat them? Ethan looked out the window at the black ship still floating nearby. They're watching, he said quietly. They're waiting to see what we do next. Sarah stepped closer. Then what do we do? Ethan's eyes narrowed. He turned to the controls and pressed a button. A low hum filled the air as the ship's main cannon powered up. We show them, he said. The cannon fired, a beam of light piercing the darkness. The shadow ship shuddered under the blast, its lights flickering. Then it vanished into the void, retreating into the stars. The humans stood together on the command deck, watching the stars return to their quiet glow. Mark broke the silence. You think that's the last of them? Ethan didn't look away. From the window, no. Sarah glanced at the tiger, who was sitting calmly now, tail flicking. Then, what happens when they come back? Ethan finally turned to them, his eyes cold but steady. Then we hunt them again, he said. The tiger yawned, showing its sharp teeth, then lay down at Ethan's feet, golden eyes still watching the shadows outside. The humans stood in silence, listening to the quiet hum of the ship, the faint crackle of stars, and the promise of another hunt waiting in the darkness beyond. And somewhere in the void, the whispers began again, of the humans who walked with tigers, and of the fear they brought to those who thought themselves predators. The ship floated quietly through the darkness of space. Its hull still carried scars from the last battle. Inside, the human crew sat around the central table. The air was heavy, filled with silence, and thought. Sarah broke the silence first. We fought them here. We fought them in the jungle. We fought them in the void, and they keep coming. Mark nodded. They don't stop. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his hands folded. His eyes were calm but sharp. They won't stop, he said simply. Sarah leaned forward, her voice low. Then what do we do? Ethan's gaze shifted to the tiger lying nearby, its golden eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The tiger lifted its head, watching him. We finish it, Ethan said. Mark frowned. Finish it? How? Ethan pressed a button on the table. A hologram flickered to life, showing a giant planet bathed in red light. Around it spun rings of black rock. Small ships swarmed around its surface like insects. This, Ethan said, his voice steady, is their homeworld. Sarah stared at the image. You're saying, we go there? Yes, Ethan said. We take the fight to them. To their heart, where they feel strongest. Mark hesitated. You know what that means, right? We might not come back. Ethan glanced at him. We didn't come this far just to stop now. The tiger stood and moved closer, its tail flicking. It let out a soft, deep growl. Ethan's eyes narrowed. We go at dawn. The journey took 3 days. During that time, the humans barely spoke. The air inside the ship grew tense as they approached the red planet. Even the tiger was quieter than usual, though its golden eyes never lost their fire. On the final night, Ethan sat beside the tiger, staring out at the stars. You felt it too, haven't you? He murmured. The tiger blinked slowly, then turned its gaze to the planet ahead. They think they're predators, Ethan said. But they've never hunted something like you. The tiger's tail swept the floor, silent and steady. When the planet finally filled the windows, everyone on the ship went still. The red glow cast strange shadows across their faces. Storms of black dust raged across the surface below. Towers of dark stone rose from the ground like claws. Mark swallowed hard. That doesn't look welcoming. Sarah checked her weapons, her jaw tight. Let's give them something to fear. The ship descended through the thick clouds. Lightning flashed outside, lighting up the alien city below. Hundreds of glowing eyes watched them from the streets as they landed. Ethan stood at the ramp, the tiger at his side. He turned to his team. Stay close, don't hesitate. Sarah nodded. Mark gripped his rifle. The tiger growled. The ramp lowered. The air outside was hot and thick, filled with strange smells. The ground shook faintly beneath their feet, as though the whole planet was alive. Aliens watched from the shadows as the humans walked through the streets, but none dared to move closer. The tiger's presence kept them at bay. Its golden eyes swept over them like fire. At the end of the main road stood a massive gate carved from black stone. Beyond it lay a courtyard full of armored figures. At the center stood the Shadow Regent. He was even taller now, draped in dark robes, his horns sharp and gleaming. His eyes glowed like molten metal. You shouldn't have come here, the Regent said, his voice like thunder. This is our world. Ethan stopped a few steps away. Then let's finish it here. The regent's laugh was low and cruel. You're brave, human, but you don't understand. Ethan's eyes narrowed. I understand enough. The regent gestured with one clawed hand. Dozens of armored warriors stepped forward, surrounding the humans. Their weapons crackled with energy. The air hummed with tension that Ethan didn't move. The tiger crouched low, muscles tense. Its eyes locked on the regent. The first alien lunged. The tiger struck before anyone else could move, claws tearing through armor like paper. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Sarah and Mark fought back to back, their weapons flashing. Ethan moved like a shadow, precise and calm. And in the center of it all, the tiger moved like a storm, silent, deadly, unstoppable. One by one, the warriors fell. Their cries echoed off the walls as fear spread through the ranks. The regent watched, his smile fading. This is impossible, he hissed. Ethan stepped closer, his voice cold. You thought you ruled predators. You thought you understood the hunt, but you've never met the kings of Earth. The tiger let out a deafening roar that shook the stones beneath their feet. The regent drew a long black blade and charged. He moved faster than anything had seen before, striking with all his strength. But the tiger was faster. It leapt at the regent, slamming into him with enough force to crack the ground. They rolled across the courtyard, claws and blade flashing. In the dark, Ethan watched as the regent struggled, his strikes growing desperate. The tiger's jaws closed on his arm, snapping the blade in two. With one final savage bite, the fight was over. The regent collapsed, his body motionless. The courtyard fell silent. The remaining aliens stared at the humans in fear. Their weapons dropped to the ground. Slowly, they began to back away. Ethan stood over the regent's body, breathing hard. He glanced at Sarah and Mark, who stood at his sides, battered but alive. It's done, Sarah whispered. Ethan shook his head. No. He looked up at the crowd of aliens watching them. This ends now, Ethan called, his voice echoing through the courtyard. You thought you owned the hunt. You thought you ruled predators. But you were wrong. He placed a hand on the tiger's head. The animal stood tall and still, its golden eyes blazing in the red light. On Earth, Ethan continued, we learned what it means to survive. We learned what it means to hunt. And we learned what it means to be hunted. He let the words hang in the air. If you come for us again, he said, his voice deadly quiet, we won't just bring the tiger. The aliens didn't answer. They only watched, silent and afraid. The humans turned and walked back through the gates. The tiger followed, its tail flicking behind it. The city was silent as they passed. No one dared to move. At the ship, Sarah glanced back at the dark towers. Think they'll remember this? Ethan gave a faint smile. They'll remember. Mark shook his head. What if they don't? Ethan's eyes narrowed. Then we remind them. The ramp closed behind them. The ship lifted into the sky, leaving the red planet shrinking below. Through the window, Ethan watched the surface fade into blackness. The tiger sat beside him, calm and watchful. Sarah leaned against the wall, her voice soft. Do you think it's over now? Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked down at the tiger, then out at the stars. No, he said quietly. The hunt never ends. The ship vanished into the void, leaving the whispers of the tiger behind and a galaxy that would never forget the day it met the true kings of predators. The stars outside the ship seemed colder than usual. Ethan stood at the viewing window, his arms crossed, watching the darkness. The tiger lay at his feet, breathing slowly, its golden eyes half closed but awake. Behind him, Sarah and Mark sat at the table, going through reports and scans of the red planet they had just left behind. We broke their pride, Sarah said softly. We killed their regent. Their warriors are afraid to face us now. Mark nodded but didn't look convinced. Maybe, but it still feels wrong, like it was too easy. Ethan turned slightly, his eyes sharp. You're right. Sarah frowned. What do you mean? Ethan moved to the table and tapped one of the scans. It showed a massive crater deep under the surface of the red planet, a place none of them had noticed before. This, Ethan said. We didn't fight their real strength. We fought their masks. This is where it all started. Mark squinted at the scan. What is it? Ethan's voice was quiet. Something older. Something they're afraid of. The tiger raised its head, letting out a low growl that sent a shiver through the room. Ethan met its gaze and spoke softly. We go there next. The ship descended again, slipping through storms of black dust and lightning. This time, they landed near the edge of the great crater, a massive scar in the planet's surface. Strange lights flickered below, and faint roars echoed from deep underground. The air was thick and heavy as they stepped out. Even the tiger moved more slowly here, its ears flat, its tail low. The ground trembled underfoot. Mark looked around uneasily. Why does it feel like something's watching us? Because something is, Ethan said quietly. Sarah checked her weapon. Let's make this quick. They moved toward a dark opening at the base of the crater. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, glowing faintly as they passed. The air grew colder with every step. Inside, the cavern opened into a vast underground chamber. It was lit by a pale blue glow from enormous crystal pillars. The ground was cracked and uneven, and the walls were covered in carvings of strange creatures, some that looked like the aliens they had fought. And some even stranger. Sarah ran her fingers over one of the carvings. These are the aliens. But the others? They're older, Ethan said. Predators of predators. Mark swallowed hard. You mean something hunted even them? Ethan didn't answer. At the center of the chamber was a giant stone platform. On it lay a massive black egg, covered in cracks, faint light pulsing from within. The tiger stopped, its fur standing on end. It growled low, its eyes locked on the egg. Sarah whispered, What is that? Ethan stepped closer, his voice calm but tight. The reason they were afraid. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. A deafening roar filled the chamber, and the egg began to split open. From inside, a creature emerged, larger than anything they had ever seen. Its body was covered in dark scales that shimmered like oil, and its eyes glowed a deep ancient gold. Its mouth was full of jagged teeth, and its limbs ended in claws longer than swords. It moved slowly at first, then turned its massive head toward the humans. Its gaze alone made Sarah take a step back. Mark raised his weapon. What is that? Ethan stood still, staring up at it. The first predator, he said quietly. The one they couldn't kill. The creature let out a roar so loud the stones above cracked. The chamber trembled as it stepped forward, its tail smashing into a pillar. The tiger stepped in front of Ethan, crouching low, its own golden eyes blazing. The creature lunged without warning. The tiger met it head-on, claws flashing, fangs bared. The two collided in a storm of fury and sound, rolling across the floor. The humans fired their weapons, but the creature's hide was too thick. The blasts barely scratched it. Ethan shouted over the chaos, "Find its weakness!" Sarah and Mark ran along the edges of the chamber, searching the carvings for a clue. Meanwhile, the tiger and the ancient beast clashed again and again. The tiger's claws left deep gashes in the creature's skin, but it kept fighting, its massive jaws snapping shut inches from Ethan. Sarah suddenly stopped in front of a large carving. "Here," she called. "It's afraid of light." Ethan turned to her. "What kind of light?" Sarah pointed to a part of the carving where beams of light pierced the creature's body, burning it. "Pure light, from the crystals." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Mark, the crystals." Mark sprinted to the nearest glowing pillar and smashed its base with his rifle. A blinding light burst from the crack, striking the creature. The beast let out a howl of pain and stumbled back. Its scales smoked where the light touched them. Ethan shouted, "Do it again." Mark and Sarah moved from pillar to pillar, breaking them one by one. Each burst of light struck the creature, driving it back, burning through its ancient skin. The tiger leapt at the creature's face, sinking its claws deep into its eyes. The beast roared in fury, but its movements grew slower. Finally, with one last blinding flash, the final crystal shattered. The chamber flooded with pure, white light. The creature shrieked and fell to the ground, its body dissolving into ash and smoke. Silence returned to the chamber. Ethan walked slowly to the center, where the creature's remains still smoldered. He looked down at the ash and spoke softly. "Even the greatest predator has its end." The tiger sat nearby, chest heaving, its fur scorched but its golden eyes still burning. Sarah and Mark joined him, breathing hard. Mark muttered, "So that's what they were afraid of." Ethan nodded. "They weren't the top of the chain. This was." Sarah looked around at the carvings again. "How many more like it do you think there are?" Ethan glanced at the tiger, then at the stars above. "Doesn't matter," he said quietly. "We'll face them." They returned to the ship in silence. The crater behind them was quiet now, the faint glow of the crystals gone. As the ship lifted into the sky, the planet below seemed smaller, less threatening. On the command deck, Sarah sat at the controls, Mark leaned against the wall, and Ethan stood at the window. The tiger lay beside him, its fur brushed clean, its golden eyes still watchful. Mark broke the silence. "Do you think they'll come after us again?" Ethan didn't turn. "If they do," he said calmly, "we'll be ready." Sarah glanced at the tiger. "Even for another one of those?" Ethan finally smiled faintly. "Especially for another one." The tiger let out a quiet growl, low and deep, as if it agreed. As the ship slipped back into the stars, Ethan spoke one last time, almost to himself. "The hunt never ends, but neither do we." And in the quiet of space, the whispers began again. Of the humans who walked with tigers, and of the day they faced the predator of predators. The ship glided silently through the black ocean of stars. For the first time in days, the humans felt the weight of what they had done. Below them, the red planet lay quiet, its ancient predator defeated. But the stars ahead shimmered strangely. Shapes moved in the dark, faint, silent shadows. On the command deck, Ethan stood at the window, his arms behind his back. The tiger lay at his side, its golden eyes glowing faintly. Sarah sat at the console, her fingers tracing the edges of a map. Mark leaned against the wall, arms crossed. For a while, no one spoke. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. "We killed their regent. We killed the creature they worshipped. So why do I still feel watched?" Mark nodded slowly. "Because we are." Ethan's jaw tightened. "They're coming." Sarah turned to look at him. "You mean?" He pointed to the map. A cluster of lights blinked there, a formation of massive ships moving together, closing in on their position. Mark squinted. "That's not just a fleet." Ethan's voice was calm, but low. "That's the entire empire." It began as a faint hum, like a storm brewing in the distance. Then the black of space erupted with light. Hundreds, maybe thousands of alien ships emerged, filling the void. Their weapons glowed. Their engines burned like suns. Sarah's eyes widened. That's all of them. They're afraid," Ethan said softly. "And desperate." Mark swallowed hard. "What do we do?" Ethan glanced at the tiger, then back at the endless armada. "We finish the hunt." The tiger stood, tail swishing, its muscles tense. Its golden eyes locked on the enemy, unblinking. The alien fleet began to close in. Their leader appeared on the screen, not just one creature this time, but a council of shadowy figures, their eyes blazing like fire. "You should not have come this far," one of them hissed. "You woke what should have stayed buried. You brought ruin to our kind. Ethan's reply was steady, quiet. You started this. You are nothing, another figure said. One ship, 3 humans. One beast. Against us. Ethan's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. Then let's see. As the fleet moved into attack formation, Ethan pressed a button on the console. A signal burst from their ship, bright and strong, racing across the stars. Mark stared. At him. What was that? Ethan turned to him, calm as ever. We're not alone. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the stars came alive. From every direction, ships emerged. Human ships, black and silver, bristling with weapons. But not just humans. Other species, too. Creatures the Empire had oppressed, hunted, enslaved. They came in all shapes and sizes, their ships flying strange banners, their weapons glowing. Sarah's breath caught. You called them. Ethan's eyes glinted. They were waiting. The alien fleet faltered for the first time, their perfect lines breaking as they saw the growing armada arrayed against them. On the screen, the council hissed in rage. You think this changes anything? We are the hunters. Ethan's smile was cold. Not anymore. The tiger roared, its voice rising above even the thunder of engines and weapons. The sound carried across the coms, reaching every ship. Human and alien alike, the signal to attack. The battle began. The void filled with light and fire. Beams of energy streaked across the black, ships exploding into shards of metal and flame. The human and allied ships cut through the Empire's fleet with precision and fury. On the command deck, Ethan moved like ice, calm and sharp. Target. Their flagships, he ordered. Break their spine. Mark manned the weapons, firing shot after shot, each one hitting its mark. We've got this, he muttered through gritted teeth. Sarah coordinated the Allied fleet, her voice firm and clear. Sector 7, flank them, push them toward the sun. The tiger stood at the center of the deck, watching the carnage, its eyes unblinking. Every time it roared, the Allied ships seemed to surge forward, striking harder. But the Empire's fleet was vast. Even as their ships fell, more came. Their largest vessel, a monstrous dreadnought, moved forward, its weapons charging. They're going for the heart, Sarah said, her voice tight. If that thing fires, it won't. Ethan cut her off. He turned to the tiger and knelt beside it. For a moment, their eyes met, human and beast, as if they understood each other without words. Ready? Ethan asked. The tiger growled low, its muscles coiling. Ethan stood and gave the order. All power to the tiger's chamber. Sarah's eyes widened. Ethan, do it, he said firmly. The lights on the ship dimmed. Panels opened in the floor, revealing a platform surrounded by strange technology. The tiger stepped onto it without hesitation. Its golden eyes glowed brighter, its fur bristling with static. A humming sound filled the air, rising higher and higher until it became a roar. Energy surged from the tiger, through the ship into the weapons. Beams of brilliant light shot forward, striking the Empire's dreadnought. The massive ship cracked, its armor melting. Then, with a final roar from the tiger, the dreadnought exploded in a blinding flash. Cheers erupted through the Allied fleet. Empire's ships began to retreat, their formations broken. One by one, they vanished into the dark, leaving only silence. On the command deck, everyone stood frozen for a moment, staring at the empty space where the enemy had been. Sarah sank into her chair, letting out a shaky breath. We did it. Mark laughed, the sound nervous but real. We actually did it. Ethan didn't smile. He simply watched the stars, his hands behind his back. The tiger stepped off the platform, its fur still faintly glowing. It walked to Ethan's side and sat, calm once again. Ethan spoke softly. The hunt is over. Across the galaxy word spread of the humans who walked with the tiger. Of the day the hunters became the hunted. Of how the Empire fell not to an army, but to a single ship, a few brave souls, and a predator older than fear. Allies and strangers alike sent messages of thanks, of awe, of promises to stand together, but Ethan knew better than to believe it was truly the end. Later that night, as the ship floated quietly in the dark, Sarah found him at the window. "You should rest," she said gently. Ethan didn't move. "There's no rest for hunters," she smiled faintly. "Then what now?" He glanced at the tiger, who lay curled up but awake, its golden eyes still burning. Ethan's voice was calm, certain. "We watch the stars, we wait. If something comes, we hunt again." The tiger yawned, showing its teeth, and laid its head on its paws. Sarah stood beside Ethan, watching the stars with him. For the first time in a long while, the galaxy felt quiet. But deep in the void, something still moved, and Ethan, with the tiger at his side, was ready. Always ready. The ship floated silently through the galaxy, heading toward a small blue star. Its journey had been long, and its scars ran deep, yet it still moved with quiet strength. On the command deck, the humans sat in silence, each lost in thought. Mark leaned against the wall, his arms crossed but his eyes soft. Sarah sat at the console, her fingers tracing the outlines of Earth on a glowing screen. Ethan stood by the window, as always, his gaze fixed on the stars. At his feet lay the tiger, stretched out but awake, its golden eyes watching the darkness beyond. They were going home, for the first time in weeks, maybe months. No one spoke of enemies. No one spoke of battles. Sarah finally broke the silence, her voice quiet. "Do you think they'll even recognize us?" Ethan didn't turn his head. "Doesn't matter." Mark chuckled faintly, though there was no real humor in it. "We left as soldiers. We're returning as what? Legends?" Ethan didn't answer. Hours later, the ship entered the solar system. The familiar shapes of planets and moons came into view. Earth shone ahead of them, bright and alive, for the first time in a long time. Sarah smiled. "There it is, home." Even Mark's hard expression softened. "Didn't think I'd ever see it again." The tiger stood, stretching slowly, its fur shimmering faintly. Its eyes glowed brighter as it stared at the blue world ahead, as though it knew what this meant. As they approached, the cums crackled to life. A voice, human, warm and full of disbelief, came through. "This is Earth Command. Identify yourself." Ethan pressed the cum button and spoke calmly. "Hunter 1, returning from the void." There was a long pause before the voice answered. Again, this time softer, almost awed. "Welcome home." The ship descended through the clouds, landing on a wide stretch of green field near a coastal city. A crowd had already gathered, soldiers, officials, and civilians alike, all waiting, their eyes wide as they watched the scarred ship settle to the ground. The ramp lowered. Ethan stepped out first, his boots touching Earth's soil once more. Sarah and Mark followed close behind, and then, silently, powerfully, the tiger emerged. The crowd gasped at the sight of it. Children hid behind their parents. Some soldiers even stepped back. But the tiger only walked forward calmly, its golden eyes scanning them all. One of the officials stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly. You're the ones who fought them? The ones who broke the Empire?" Ethan nodded once. "We ended the hunt." The man stared at the tiger, his voice barely a whisper. "And that?" Ethan's lips curved into the faintest smile. "That," he said softly, "is why they lost." They were led to a great hall in the city. Banners hung from the walls, and the air was full of voices. People stared at them. Wherever they walked, some in fear, some in admiration, some in disbelief. Sarah sat quietly, letting it all wash over her. Mark looked around, shaking his head. "Feels strange," he muttered. "Like we're ghosts or something." Ethan stood near a window, looking out at the sea. The tiger sat at his side, silent and watchful as always. A young boy approached. them cautiously, holding something small in his hands. He stopped a few steps away, staring at the tiger with wide eyes. "Is it dangerous?" the boy asked. Ethan looked at the tiger, then back at the boy. "Only to those who deserve it." The boy stepped closer, holding out what he had, a small medal, shining gold. "They told me you were heroes," he said softly. Ethan didn't move, but Sarah gently took the medal from the boy and pinned it to Ethan's chest. Ethan glanced at her, his expression unreadable, but he gave the boy the faintest nod. "Thank you." The boy smiled and ran back to the crowd. That night they stood together on a quiet hill outside the city. Below them, the lights of Earth sparkled, and the sea stretched endlessly into the dark. Mark sat on a rock, staring up at the stars. "So, what now?" he asked. Sarah lay back in the grass, her hands behind her head. "Maybe we live." Ethan stood alone, the wind stirring his coat. The tiger sat at his feet, its eyes on the horizon. After a long moment, Ethan spoke. "The hunt is over. For now, but the stars, they're never quiet for long." Sarah sat up, watching him. "You think something else is out there?" Ethan's lips curved slightly. "There's always something out there." Mark chuckled. "Figures. You're already planning the next fight." Ethan finally turned, looking at them both. His eyes were steady, calm, but there was something fierce in them too. "We don't plan," he said softly. "We wait, and when the hunt begins again, we'll be ready." The tiger stood then, its body outlined by the moonlight. It raised its head and let out a deep, low roar that echoed across the hills, carrying into the night. Below, the city grew quiet as people looked up at the sound, a reminder that the hunters had returned, that the galaxy was no longer theirs to rule, and that somewhere out there, in the dark, the kings of Earth still walked. The humans stood together, the wind in their hair, the tiger at their side, watching the stars. And somewhere beyond those stars, faint and distant, new whispers began, of the day the hunters came home, of the tiger that walked beside them, of the galaxy that would never forget their names. Ethan reached down, resting his hand on the tiger's head. Its golden eyes turned to him, calm and unblinking. "Come on," he murmured. "Let's see what tomorrow brings." The tiger blinked once, slowly, as though it understood, and together they walked back toward the city, their shadows long and silent behind them. The hunt was over, for now.